Every so often we smell something and it brings back memories of days long past. Pumpkin spice reminded me of the Octobers I spent gathering fall leaves by the streets with my sister and jumping into them. Boiling green tea reminded me of my father passed out on the couch and my mother screaming and cussing about all the work that she had to do. The smell of pork and noodles being fried reminded me of the Chinese restaurant I worked in. Ah, how I wish I could go back to those days. Chamomile and lavender incense. As I was passing the grubby house in K-Town to get to the Korean barbecue, where one of my friends or another would treat us all when they failed a test or got turned down on a date, I smelt it. One sniff, then another, and then I was lost in the smell. I felt as if I was wasting my life away with these kids, not knowing what would happen the next day. I decided I needed to rush back home. We weren't too poor. Dad had a desk job. Mum sold some things she made, like wall scrolls, in her shop in Chinatown. Nothing big, but we made do. My sister was a year younger and a bundle of joy. I was, well, your average Asian kid. Made mostly A's. A lot into anime. You know the drill. But somehow, that smell, it made me feel like I wasn't enough, and that I needed to get back home, to study harder, to get better grades. I don't know. On impulse, I screamed something at my buddies, and I turned and ran back into the subway. I almost ran into her when the train pulled up. She looked about my age, auburn hair, which was rare for an Asian, to say the least. I apologised and got onto the train, letting her get in before me. She saw how flustered I was and said something. I don't even remember what, but I laughed. It was funny, I presume. We got talking and exchanged numbers. She was a sophomore, just like me. I was thanking the gods for letting me run into her. I figured that, though the overwhelming sense to study more was just a ruse the gods played to let me run into her. It's funny how much a mind can conjure when things seem natural. We soon started dating, and then we were so much in love. I made truce with my friends. We still hang out, but I spend so much more time with Leah. That was her name. Gorgeous, isn't it? Soon it was senior year, and I got excellent grades, and even got into UCLA School of Engineering, which was great, because Leah got in too. I moved out of my parents' house, as did she, and we both stayed together. Throughout college, we studied together, ate together, slept together. It was amazing. I swear I could have memorized each of the curves on her face when she grinned, how her eyes glinted under the lamppost, how her hair glistened under the California sun. Soon it was time to graduate college, and that was when Leah became pregnant. We both got an offer to work at big companies, but Leah decided to stay home until the child is born. We moved into a bigger apartment, closer to my place of work. We got married that November, and our little Anna was born in January. She was my pride and joy. I remember how she grinned every time we played peekaboo. I remember how she would waddle over to Papa when I came home. I was happy when Leah got a job. Mum agreed to take care of Anna while Leah and I worked, since it was only her and Dad at home. She was a much calmer woman now. Ty was born when Anna was 3, and he was as adorable as Anna had been. Anna loved her little brother and even took care of him, in her own way, as toddlers often do. Life was bliss, and if it had stayed that way, I wouldn't be posting here. It was one of those rare days, a gloomy November morning, mere days before our anniversary, that I got a call at work. She had picked up Anna and Ty from Mum's and was driving to the grocery store when the accident happened. None of them could be saved. I cursed the heavens and hell. My life was torn apart by a single inebriated driver. I cried for hours, screaming and cursing and breaking the things I could lay a hand on. At their funeral service they had it. I had my head bowed down when the strong scent penetrated my nostrils, invading my nerves. Lavender and chamomile incense. An overwhelming sense of dread crept over me as I got up with my hand outstretched, walking towards where their bodies lay, and my whole body reeling in grief and moving seemingly of its own. Tears were streaming down my face when my vision blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I was in K-Town, outside the old man's house. I screamed in horror. My family had died. It took my friends hours to calm me down, as livid as I was. When I realised what had happened, I ran down the subway, hoping I would run into Leah again, see her face one more time. I spent days not leaving my room, mourning the loss of my family. My friends told me I had only paused for a moment when I started screaming and crying that night. But can a momentary lapse cause a lifetime full of vivid memories, people and emotions? It took me hours to recover. I would have nightmares of my children begging in the streets, asking in soft voices why I deserted them. My sweet Anna, my Ty, and my Leah gone, all in a momentary lapse. After spending years recovering and barely able to scrape through high school, I became a photographer. Something about being able to capture memories, I made peace with what happened, in my own way, I guess. My job took me around the world, and in one such trip in rural Tibet, I saw her. Leah. My Leah. She was begging on the streets of Lhasa, with her 2 kids, a girl who looked about 3, and a boy who couldn't have been more than a few months. Her eyes bore into mine, and I blinked once, and they were gone once more. I found myself recognising a familiar scent, lavender and chamomile. Unable to bear having lost my family once again, and back home I took to drinking once more. I became a raging alcoholic, not able to spend a few hours without drinking. While driving drunk one day, I ran into another car. I think it had a lady and her kids. I killed kids. I killed my wife and my kids. I screamed and yelled until I was arrested and subdued. I was posted to here, to be alone for the rest of my life. You can listen to me, right? You can hear me, right? I have only one question. Why? With that, he dissolved into screams. I work as a security guard in the psych hospital. We're not allowed to talk to patients, but we can make notes of what they say while in confinement, as sometimes they may open up if they think no one is listening. Most of what I hear are spooky gibberish, and he's far from the scariest patient I have seen. I'll tell that story another day, but his story made me cry for hours when I got home. When your own brain turns on you and creates your tragedy in a momentary lapse, what would you do?